Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunrise Daily Today. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
From Abuja, indeed. Good morning. Yes, we're both in the same location as Chamberlain and I. Good morning and welcome. I'm Mawugu Yusuf.
And from Lagos, good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
And it so happens that we're also at the same location here in Lagos. It's January 18 and it's a Wednesday morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, you know, the Vice President, he just resonated, underscored what several people just wish could just happen, you know, just like that these days. And hopefully we'll let you listen to it probably as we proceed in a moment, I hope. But talking about ethical revolution, how he thinks that the country will not survive if we do not embark on that ethical value revolution, which he says the government has to lead it. We have to reward good behavior, ensure that very, very good standards are upheld by the government. And above all else, while he spoke about some of these things, and these are some of the things that, you know, I mean, I know we've highlighted some parts of this a lot of times in this country, how it just appears as though people get away with almost with murder. Things happen, you just find out, where's the punitive measure? Where's the consequence of some of these things? And look at him, he was speaking right there and speaking to a lot of those leaders. He thinks, look, you all sitting here, you have to take the bull by the horn. You have to also play your part. But look, we can't even underscore or emphasize a lot of this much more than he has. But it is huge, it is important. But my only concern now is this: I don't know how we'll begin to operationalize some of those things that the VP has said, especially now that we are in this transition period, trying to get those who will lead this country for the next 4 years. But if it's something that we need to do, I know it will take some doing, because right now, you need a critical mass of people with same values and mindsets to get in there and begin to make that change. It's not impossible. It's not. But it's something that can happen. But in order not to make it look so very heavy and tasking and impossible, I think it just starts with you and us, the way we go out there to vote. Think about those principles and those values. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why do you want to go do what you want to go do? Maybe you never can tell. You just may see, you know how they say, you know, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a step and a little drops of water. You know how that could lead. So, very, very fantastic point, I dare say, from the Vice President.
I'm sure you're wondering why I was chuckling, because the moment he just said something about change, the next moment he said it begins with you. I just remembered. Oh, remember what happened when the Buhari administration came
No, that's not what I was referring to.
No, but look,
just in case.
Let's be practical. I mean, let's take away the politics. The truth of the matter is, yes, political elite set the tone. And I think that the Vice President, by the way, he was speaking, I think it was some sort of homecoming for him.
Yeah,
back in Abeokuta, Baptist Boys High School, celebrating their 100 years in existence. You also saw their former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, but not in the same report, when they did their 100, when they did their a walk. The former president, of course, in his elements there, joining them in the march. So
trying to whip them all in line.
Oh yes, whip them all in line. Very interesting video. The vice president is not, you know, is not far away when he says that, you know, it has to start from the political elite, but in particular, and there needs to be swift reward for good behavior, acceptable behavior, and swift punishment for unacceptable behavior. And when people haven't seen that over the years, when they know that, you know, they can commit blue murder and they get away with it, then there is no incentive for anybody to keep being good, apart from, you know, moral instinct, apart from, you know, the fact that some people have just been raised right, and then every time they look behind them and look at what their children will learn, they really have to question themselves, you know, how can we keep on this path? But the truth of the matter is, we need, as you rightly pointed out, Chamberlain, a critical mass for things to really change. In the situation whereby people have since accepted that when you have sudden wealth, it's the blessings of God, and nobody is questioning where it's come from, there are big problems. And so calling on the political elite, the religious elite, the business elite to all come together to, fashion out, to model out a minimum set of acceptable behavior, ethical standards, he calls them. It might be a tall order, but truth of the matter is we all need to re-examine how far away we've walked from that line and how quickly we can begin to call ourselves back to order. Because there's a future generation. Even right now, when you look on social media pages, people are beginning to really show some concern. There's a whole culture of, it doesn't concern me, do you, as long as you are happy. People are beginning to know that this sort of attitude only makes society disintegrate. And if you do not think about the future, if you do not think about those coming behind you, there are big questions as to what sort of country you will have at the end of the day.
Malka, you started by saying, by reminding us of that acronym, Change Begins With You. I remember another one, popularized by the office of the former Minister of Information now, God rest her soul, Mrs. Dora Akonyele, Good People, Great Nation. Now, the underlying theme or message, from those acronyms are good and change. When it comes to, ethical values, there are so many things that come to mind, and a lot of them worrisome. Either it is during fuel scarcity, perhaps when the scarcity has not really started, but filling stations are already hoarding and making life difficult for fellow Nigerians. Either it is public service corruption, where you have to get a service, and then the motivation has to be, you have to, some money has to exchange hands. You could go on and on. Perhaps you get into a certain part of the country and you require assistance of some sort, so you're trying to purchase something. And if you don't speak a certain language, you can't have that thing done for you. We could go on and on about citing the examples when it comes to ethical values. That understanding that I cannot go and come and kill myself is what precedes, instead of selflessness, instead of, doing as you would rather be done by. If I can quickly find it, I shared a certain part of the Constitution which talked about, Section E, subsection E of Section 24. It talks about rendering assistance to appropriate and lawful agencies in the maintenance of law and order. You can't do this if you're not, first of all, thinking about the other person, if you're not proceeding with that sense of selflessness. And that's why I'd like to also add that it's critical, for us to, first of all, have a sense of being Nigerian. First of all, before you think about yourself as a Yoruba man or an Igbo man or a Hausa man or an Igala man, when we have that sense of oneness, perhaps we can then begin to chart a course for a more comprehensive national ethic and values that we can live our lives by, that we can build a great nation on. When we think of ourselves, first of all, as Nigerians, before we proceed, with other primordial and ethnic, sentiments. I think that is, first of all, very critical. So two things here. Selflessness proceeds from good people, great nation, or change begins with you. And that when we also see ourselves as Nigerians, before we see ourselves as anything else. Ayo, I don't know how you're weighing in on this. Well, it'll be interesting.
I'll always, want to go back to what we have done before, where we're coming from. The Second Republic government of Shehu Shagari launched then what they called the National Ethical Revolution. And I think that's what gave birth to the song which was written by Wole Soyinka. Many people don't know that he was also a songwriter, and performed by Tunji Oyelano and the Benders. Many know the song as I Love My Country, I No Go Lie. But the title of that song is ethical revolution, essentially talking about ethical revolution. And if you look at the section of the Constitution that you quoted, the section preceding that, section 23, spoke specifically to certain values, ethics that every Nigerian needs to live by. One of them, which of course you saw earlier, is discipline, integrity, dignity of labor, social justice, religious tolerance, self-reliance, and patriotism. Guess what? Section 24, first one under it says, every citizen of Nigeria must abide by this constitution, respect its ideals and its institutions. Guess what? The president is a citizen. The vice president is a citizen. The ministers are citizens. The civil servants are citizens. The governors are citizens. The members of the Houses of Assemblies in the states are citizens. Are we living by these dictums? If we are not, how can we then ensure, or rather expect, that other Nigerians must do what we, who have privileged position in leadership, are doing? How can we expect them to do what we are not doing when we are supposed to be showing the light? If I, for instance, am found driving against traffic, or driving in a place I am not supposed to drive, as someone who speaks to Nigerians every day, I have broken the law, I have broken the Constitution. Shouldn't the law take its toll on me? Essentially, I'm saying that we're all breaking the laws and violating the Constitution because we have not demonstrated discipline from the top down. Question, who is the police that will police the police when the police itself is not disciplined? Chamberlain.
Well, good question, because many of us, we need to have a rethink, actually, because we should be seen to be loyal to the country. I can't remember, a certain lawyer was saying something the other time that loyalty shouldn't be to the office of the president. It should be to the country above all else, and nobody should be above the law. And those are because we just seem to mouth the words and talk about the intendment, the spirit of the law. Meanwhile, the reality is far from us. We are so far away from ensuring that we actually abide by those words of the Constitution. And that's what it really should be. If we do not abide by all of those and keep thinking that things should go on in that way, it'll be very far. All right, we'll just come back to you in just a moment and take you through some of the dailies. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. Let's take you through some of the dailies, and we'll start with New Telegraph this morning. 2023 elections belong to young people. INEC. Yeah, you heard. So make of that what you will. It belongs to you. If you don't, if you throw it away, you have yourself to blame at the end of the day. That's the bottom line of what he's saying here. But look at the writers. They say more. It says Nigeria has 16.7 million more voters than the rest of West Africa. Insists process will hold despite attacks on facilities. Admits displays voters insecurity big challenge. FHQ, we've done our deployments, arrangements for materials movement, operational order for poll ready. It's always a challenge, you know, when you talk about logistics, the big question mark on logistics. So, which is technically a way that elections are rigged, because if everywhere you are supposed to start by 7, and you arrive very late. You remember those days? And then they say it doesn't matter, you end at the same time, hoping that this time it'll be a lot different. After all, the electoral law provides that where certain things are not able to happen, probably machine elections don't hold, it will continue the next day. So we should remember that one. And then it says PVC collection. We've recorded 65% success in Bauchi, ascribed to REC. I wonder what other states, what their figure will be on this one. I think the commission was bemoaning low turnout for Plateau State. Commission has no excuse not to deliver credible polls This is ascribed to Senate. So there's a big lead on the front page here, so you might as well just go ahead and check that out. So then at the bottom strip, FG will pay Conwa salary for ASU's 8-month strike period. Ngige. Wait a minute. We don't know, were they working at that time?
Well, that's what they said, that they were not a part of the strike. They were going to work.
They were going to work? Who saw them?
That's what they said.
For 8 months? So what was achieved in that 8 months? I'd like to know. Okay, look at it. It says, unions' lack of transparency, democracy led to Conwa NAMDA registration. So, the period that they were not registered, and then much later they were registered. So,
divide and rule.
oh.
It's a strategy that never ceases to fail. Well, look at this. The Guardian is next up for you. And look at that. Uneasy calm at CBN as officials grapple with integrity issues. That's the lead story that they have here for you. CBN DSS downplay, dismiss Emefiele's arrest saga as speculative. Officials not in DSS custody, Apex Bank insists. Somebody called Adi, integrity of system completely compromised. That statement is credited to him. You might want to, or her, as the case might be, you might want to read page 6 for details on the story. But we've been following this saga. We saw on Monday the return of the CBN governor to work. He was away for a while, said he was on leave. Remember then that they had said he was away on some medical, break. And then when he returned, it was rumored that the DSS invaded, that was the word that was used, the CBN headquarters here in Abuja. There was a strong denial from the DSS in spite of speculative pictures. There were pictures provided showing people who looked like DSS officials. But the DSS said, that's not us. That's not us at all. And now we're beginning to see another story. CBN DSS downplay, dismiss Emefiele's arrest saga as speculative. Officials not in DSS custody, Apex Bank insist. But all of this is not looking pretty for the Apex Bank of Nigeria and its governor. So I hope that they're able to sort it out. I hope that maybe we'll be able to get a press brief soon on what this is all about. And Nigerian people have clarity on why it is that the DSS would have been looking for the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Don't forget that his signature is on all the currencies that we carry around, and that's a national symbol. Look at this. Google removes 3.4 billion ads, suspends 5.6 million advertisers in Nigeria. Others. It's a business story. 2023, we're ready. INEC chair Yakubu insists at Chatham House. That story is also there. The pictures worth far much more than 2,000 words. Look at that. A petrol-laden tanker suffered brake failure at Upper Oshodi after struggling with street urchins who wanted to extort the driver.
Wow.
So this was a disaster, essentially, averted. And if you look at the tailback from that particular incident, it must have been harrowing for the people who were on that road yesterday. But I think that they'd rather suffer that kind of harrowing incidents than be caught up in flames, assuming that tanker had gone up in flames. I really do hope that young people get wise. You can be struggling and fighting with the driver at the steering because you want to collect how much, and he's carrying petrol, trucks that we consider moving bombs, for God's sake.
The traffic officials, they see these things. Most times, we see
they look away.
See these things and they look the other
They
way.
look away because oftentimes they feel incapacitated. They feel like they can handle the situation. That's why. So this has to change, because this nearly could have killed people yesterday. But thank God, all it did was result in some inconvenience, maybe a lot of inconvenience. But thank God, nobody died. Let's leave it there for the Guardian newspapers.
And you know what, Malpe, that speaks to national ethical values. What were those young people prioritizing in that, impasse, so to speak? Well, the Nigerian News Direct is what I have for you next this morning, and he leads with that much expected appearance of the INEC boss at the Chatham House in the United Kingdom. And this is it. Technical error fears INEC to conduct mock test of BVAS nationwide. These are the riders. Eyes body odor identification technology. That drew quite some humor yesterday. Well, the INEC boss tampered it with that comment about making haste slowly. We're really comfortable where we are, INEC boss says commission won't wait until main elections to test system integrity. And the CSOs have been leading that advocacy for, the BVAS to be checked out, to be tested and ensured that it will work well without hitches, at least, by a huge percentage during the elections. That cannot be achieved until it is tested. And we hope that the Commission will match words with action and go ahead and test the BVAS ahead of the election, because this time around the elections will be conducted on a very huge scale. Yeah.
So if someone wears my jacket or I wear someone's jacket to INEC, to the polling unit, someone could actually vote for me. Body odor identification. It's a biometric feature, right?
There should be an odor before the odor on the jacket. I'm just assuming this morning.
Anyway.
So I believe that the machine should be smart enough to perceive the real body odor.
At the end of the day, it's a machine.
It's a machine.
It's not human.
Okay.
Well, the INEC chairman was right. Let's make haste, but let's make it slowly.
Slowly. All right. Let's take a look at some more stories for you this morning. Let's go to the bottom strip of the Nigerian News Direct. You'll find this one. Naira redesign. Governors summon Emefiele. Well, it's not just the DSS that is after the CBN governor this morning. But as rightly pointed out, we need some stability with our Apex Bank. So we hope that all of these issues will be sorted out. This one is right after that. Court sentences 32-year-old vulcanizer to death by hanging over 57,000 naira theft. Yes, you heard it. 32-year-old vulcanizer, court sentences a 32-year-old vulcanizer to death by hanging over 57,000 naira theft. And some have been set free over theft of billions of naira, I believe. Well, I'll leave you to chew on that one as we look at the last story from the front page of the Nigerian News Direct this morning. This is above the nameplate. Osun Tribunal, PDP, APC trade words over alleged plan to influence judgment. And that's it for the Nigerian News Direct.
Switch to this Nigeria newspaper this morning, and what you have on the front page, of course, it's still the Chatham House appearance of the chairman of INEC. Why Nigerians in diaspora can't vote. Stories on page 4. And the riders, INEC chair Yakubu explains that Chatham House says elections will hold as scheduled. Pleasing to know that he said, look, irrespective of the attacks, elections will continue as scheduled. Amen to that. Now, above right beside the nameplate, we mentioned this earlier. We mentioned this yesterday. Food prices remain high as inflation rate reduces slightly. Without meaning to burst anyone's bubbles, we are less than 3 months away from Easter. And every festivity always builds up to some form of price hikes of food items.
Just summarize it. What goes up in Nigeria never comes down, especially when it has to do with price of goods and services.
Well, sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. Because you could have bought a basket of tomato for 12,000 naira, you could still buy it for 5,000 naira. So it depends. It's very, very
when was the last time you visited the market?
I haven't visited, but I have procured.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, so That's right there on the front page. Find out the details of that on page 15 of This Nigeria. Right under that picture on the front page is this very interesting stories, and there's been a build-up to it as well. Finance Minister gets 3-day ultimatum to submit 23.7 trillion naira Ways and Means details to Senate. Is that for the Senate, for the Finance Minister, or for the CBN Governor? You will want to find out the details of that on page 5 of This Nigeria newspaper this morning. 23.7 trillion naira Ways and Means details to be submitted by the Finance Minister to the Senate. That story is on page 5, and that's This Nigeria this newspaper this morning.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Procurement Manager. I'm at it again this morning, right? Look at Daily Trust, Boko Haram. We spent $1 billion to retrieve territories ascribed to Buhari. $1 billion?
Yeah, you heard that.
Whoa. Says terrorism financiers want to split Nigeria. But $1 billion? But why do we still have...
Security doesn't come cheap, James.
Yeah, but $1 billion?
You want to break
What kind
down?
of results do we have? No, almost like meltdown. Because...
You don't want to break down, you want to melt down. On your own,
my
please.
Goodness, but this... And then, you know, still talking about security, because we know that we still need to do a lot better in terms of getting results. If we spend $1 billion, of course, you know that people will say we expect better results, way better results. Unfortunately, look at this. Youths burn Niger police station to protest Catholic priests killing. You know, we speak about some of this in that the authorities need to address them as quick as possible. And they need to be seen to be doing that from the people, such that, because look, people are smart. It's a global village. Everybody sees what is going on. So, who knows? And then this interesting piece at the bottom strip of the paper, Race to Nas, Etiosa. Obanikoro's son, Banky W, set for replay battle. You know, you just wonder sometimes, could there be a position or a situation where both of them just go for different offices, get elected, get into the House, a lot more young people, just go there, keep going, get into the House, as many young people as possible, get into the fray, because you need to. After all, those who, wait a minute, those who are still in government today, many of them, they've been in power for, some of them in their 20s, and now they're in their 80s. Oh, I don't want another breakdown. That's Daily Trust today.
Someone's certainly going to enter the fray very soon, because I don't know what exactly the complaint will be if,
yeah,
the field is open.
Oh, yeah. So
why don't you want to get in? Just asking.
I didn't see that coming.
Vanguard is the next one now. And look at the lead story. Atiku Dogara Obi attack APC's same faith ticket afresh. That's the lead story there. Muslim ticket recipe for disaster. That's according to Atiku. Same faith ticket, not an option, attributed to Dogara. Church to take decision soon. That's according to ECWA president. APC's same faith ticket, divisive or divisive, says Labour Party. Atiku, greatest divider of Nigeria. That's from the APC-PCC. Presidential Campaign Council. You'll find details on page 5 of the paper. Abuja Hospital gives mass burial to unclaimed corpses. For corpses that are unidentified, unclaimed, etc. Maybe they'll donate some to, for cadaver, for medical students, and then they will bury the rest. Page 6 is where you'll find details. Debt, DMO set to raise 1.2 trillion naira via FGN bonds in first quarter of 2023. That is also there for you. You might want to take up that story on page 19 of the paper. And look who is 90. It's Chief Emeka Anyoko, former Commonwealth Secretary General. He is 90.
Wow.
God continue to keep and preserve him.
Yeah.
90 and going strong. His children have an interview there. Our father brought us up with strong sense of values. That's according to the children. Let's leave it there for Vanguard newspapers.
You know, no matter what happens, Nigeria still has very fine gentlemen across board, different disciplines. Yeah, so many of them, so many. Well, that ends a look at some of the dailies here today. We will be back in just a moment. Of course, we'll be talking about elections. Stay with us.
This coming election in the continent's most populous country is shaping up to be an exceptional event. The fanfare and theatrics that had accompanied previous speakers at Chatham House was strikingly absent today. In its place, though, a strong feeling of enormous expectations, which Professor Yakubu attempted to ease.
It is exactly 38 days to the next general election in Nigeria, which I have both the privilege and challenge of leading its proper delivery. Elections in Nigeria have become events that attract extensive international attention and concern, not only because of the sheer size of the deployment, but also because of the importance of Nigeria in Africa, and most particularly in the West Africa sub-region. Understandably, therefore, there are enormous expectations, both within Nigeria and internationally, about the conduct and management of the 2023 general election. The expectations place a great responsibility on the election management body, the Independent National Electoral Commission. We are not taking these responsibilities lightly. We appreciate that there are challenges and concerns, but we also realize that there is enormous goodwill and support, both in Nigeria and beyond. Consequently, we believe that by forthrightly sharing our experiences and discussing the challenges openly, we can surmount the challenges and ensure that our elections in Nigeria continue to get better. May I, on this note, once again reiterate our position that the Commission is not contemplating, let alone planning, to postpone the 2023 general election. We are going ahead to conduct the election as scheduled.
Free, fair, and credible elections is what the Commission chief has promised the international community. But the threats facing Nigeria are multiple and widespread.
A lot of vote buying and vote selling transactions have to do with the level of ballot secrecy. So how is INEC going to improve and guarantee ballot secrecy in the upcoming elections?
The BVAS system has been used before, but not without teething problems, especially in the recent governorship election. What guarantees can you give to the Nigerian people that all the problems have been ironed out and it's going to work properly when it's counting 90 million votes?
But we have the machines for the 2023 general elections, but we didn't want to take chances. Each and every machine has been tested and confirmed that the machine is functional. So actually, for the last 2 weeks or so, our officials were in all the states of the Federation testing those machines. And the functionality of the machines is simply very encouraging. So we'll not take chances. The second thing we are going to do, and pretty soon, is to conduct mock accreditation exercise nationwide ahead of the election. But what is all this talk about vote buying? It is also for us an indication of the progress that we are making in our democracy. because it is becoming increasingly clear to everyone that the votes are counting at the end of the day, and I've said this consistently, is enforcement of the laws. There are laws, but the laws are not enforced. So let me seize the opportunity to renew our appeal as a commission for the National Assembly in Nigeria to speedily pass the Electoral Offences Commission bill.
Discourse at this Royal Institute of International Affairs, though important, is unlikely to influence voters back home. While INEC can assure the international community it is doing all it can to tackle logistical delays, violence, fraud and vote buying, what actually occurs on February the 25th will be recorded in the legacy of Professor Mahmoud Yakubu. Juliana Olayinka, Channels TV News, London.
All right, welcome back. Yes, talking about preparations for the 2023 general elections, you heard the chairman of INEC there highlighting what to expect on that day. We've got here in the studios Professor Lai Olurode, former National Commissioner for INEC. Good morning, sir. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
Well, rightly, there's been a lot of concern and interest in terms of what will happen, what should we expect, what's going to happen on election day, will things be right, will we get logistics right, what about security, should we be cautious about politicians' performance on that day, have we stamped out vote buying, several things because of what we've seen before. I mean, you perhaps from a distance, you've been observing the scenario and looking at the way things are playing out. What sticks out for you, especially amidst all of these concerns that several people have been raising?
Well, I think the first point to recognize is INEC dogged determination to deliver to the country a better set of elections. I think INEC is determined. And psychologically, I think, and in terms of logistics, INEC seems to be prepared. Of course, that is not to say the challenges probably could be said to be more overwhelming than when Jega was the chair of the Electoral Commission, particularly because of simultaneous attacks on INEC assets. And these are the foundations for credible elections. If the very premises of good elections or credible, transparent elections are being undermined deliberately by attacks, of course, I don't think it would be too hospitable to think that the preparations will not be affected one way or the other.
But in terms of this build-up to elections, perhaps if you could take it back to while you were in the commission, do we have the same amount of agitation, or is it calmer compared to that time?
No, elections have always been traumatic. People have always been very agitative. In fact, you will recall that we had to postpone one election, you know. So usually it's the same. The only thing that has changed, perhaps, is these attacks. They were not there. Because there were other acts of sabotage, but this one were overwhelming. And they are hitting the roots and so close to elections. Elections will hold in less than 40 days' time.
Yeah. But the length of time that we have for the campaigns, has it contributed in any way to perhaps just calming the nerves of everybody who is involved?
No, I shouldn't think so. In fact, you can say from one election to the other, people are always campaigning. It's not any new thing at all. And people are used to the same set of information is being dished out to them. That shouldn't be, because you can even campaign up to the point of, or up to the day of the election. Even on the day of the election itself, campaigns do go on.
But have you been able to get the polls of perhaps a fraction or some voters? Because this time, with the deployment of beavers, I hear a lot more people say, well, they're confident that this time their vote will count, whoever they go to vote for. So they're going in that confidence to this election, so they seem a lot calmer. Do you see the same thing from anywhere else?
would like to say that election technology had consistently been deployed for, generally speaking, for our elections. It's just the tempo. Now,
but not in
heightened
this,
now. It's very massive.
Okay.
And I get worried myself. But at the same time, the INEC had done very well by making sure it had tested the beavers and the other. The only one that is coming, this is not even new. The INEC viewing results is not really new because it was deployed in, I think, Ekiti and also in Osun. And it worked. And they now have a plan to even do a modeling, I mean, to do a mock kind of testing for this technology. You see, we shouldn't forget that while INEC is deploying each technology into the electoral process, I'm sure usually there's a backup. Yeah. And apart from the backup, you're not completely eliminating the manual thing itself. It's not going to be completely eliminated one day. The human agency will still be there. There'll still be human intervention. What you're trying to do is to minimize the degree and the scope of human discretion in the electoral process, which I think it makes sense, especially in terms of result. If you recall that from one polling unit to the next level, to the ward level, there could be attacks, there could be hijack of results. If you now use you now use technology to deploy that, human intervention is reduced. But at the same time, you're still going to do whatever manual processing you're going to do. You can still recall your beavers and unload it and see what it contains, just to make sure there is proper tally.
I've been just wondering, as you're speaking, you were once, of course, a national commissioner, and I'm sure you're also looking at, I wonder what the state of mind of national commissioners usually is at this time. If they're anxious, when you look at the weight, when you look at the burden, that INEC carries, and how the success of the elections and even perhaps even of the country, lies on the shoulders of INEC, because people worry about election violence. You see some people not, very certain about the future. Every time that we have an electoral cycle approaching, especially one that could see a change when, a president, for instance, is done with his tenure, there's usually, some nervousness, and sometimes you have predictions. And when you look at the elements in this particular election, if things are not done right, a lot...
The country can go under.
Exactly.
No,
so when you look at that, how do national commissioners bear the burden of that?
It's a national project. And the only equivalent, which is not really an equivalent in terms of what are at stakes, is the national census. But because the national census also has to take place simultaneously. How I wish it is possible to isolate the troubled part of the country and do the elections separately. But again, it's going to affect the other elections, because once people get to know, this is the trend, this is where...
The results.
It's most likely to affect that. So, but I think they definitely, certainly, national commissioners, they can't sleep well. Just as the candidate, I pity the candidate as well. What is going to happen?
Why do you pity the candidates?
Oh, because it's a whole burden on them until the election and their supporters. Each time I go to the field when we were in INEC, when you would think that, and I shouldn't be emotionally involved. It's just to make sure that you get the process right. If thumb printing, sometimes in a very competitive election, just one ballot alone can cause disaster. In terms of sorting, where should this go? So I don't see how any of the national commissioners can sleep well till after the elections.
Is there something we can do about it?
Even look at the court. Look at the role of the court in our elections. It's huge. The role of the court brings a lot of uncertainty. How I wish INEC has a final decision as to who the candidate will be. The INEC, there'll be all kinds of surprises being sprung up at INEC as elections go by. You can't be too certain about anything. The name is on the ballot. It's on the ballot today. The court says rule at one level, reinstate the name, remove the name again.
What do you think that we can do to, downplay the stakes? Is there anything that we can do which we haven't quite explored fully.
Yeah.
Because I know that, you know, the media is doing its best. Maybe the religious elite are also doing their best to let people know that there will be a country after this.
No, I
election is just one event.
Yeah, what makes our elections to be filled with this high sense of trepidation, anxiety, fear, will the country make it? It's just because of the power conundrum. I look at the governor of a state, the power they exercise. Look at the president of a country. Look at how many parastatals. That is why, see, for people that are very positive about this country, there's no way you can reduce tensions at elections until you do something. You just have to do something with the power equilibrium in this country. It's so massive. Why should the president exercise so much power? What for? Because at the end of the day, what is important for the country is peaceful coexistence, get food on the table, get employment for the boys. Look at the massive participation. Look at how many youths have been captured in the registration. The result, almost 75% of youth in this country. I mean, the elections are all the elections are in their hands.
Yeah.
Because 18 to 50 constituting almost 75% of the voters.
I'll ask this one question and then I'll send it to Lagos. You say that you're feeling sorry for the candidates.
Oh, for the election managers, the administrators.
Yes, but only recently, just yesterday, I think, you launched this program whereby you intend to hold candidates to their electoral promises.
Yeah.
Which is even putting them more on edge. Is there a reason why you've decided to do that?
No, it's not even me. I was invited as a guest speaker at the forum. And the thing is that when you look at campaign promises, like we agreed yesterday, it's like marriage vows. Oh, I will love you till death. Candidates will promise to even deliver the moon to your house. They will promise to deliver stars. But they never, most of them, they are never serious at this. They just say anything. And we are suggesting that, look, because campaign promises are not justiciable, it creates a challenge. And people are going to vote. The grief of vote, what the candidate are after is to have votes delivered for them. But those promises are made to the ordinary electorate, who will jump at them and on the basis of which they might decide to cast their ballot one way or the other. But you cannot be held accountable to those promises. Where is electoral accountability? Where is governance to be placed? So I think we might have to begin to think of what can we do to hold candidates accountable to what they promised the country. And now document your campaign promises, attach it to the document you're going to submit to INEC. Of course, you need to now be thinking of constitutional amendment because so many sections of the Constitution that you cannot go to court on. Look at the section that talks about the primary purpose of government shall be that the government of the Federation will be based on what? On democracy and the principles of social justice. Where is the social justice? Where is equity? You know? And where is full participation by the people? So it's a way of just escalating, making sure that governance is taken more seriously. But one of the candidates, fortunate, I wouldn't want to mention him, I promised, that is going to deliver on all these promises. And some people I know are documenting those promises now.
Well, let's flip this conversation to Lagos now, my colleagues.
Thank you, Malwe. Well, Prof, you know, one of the things that you said just before Malwe asked the final question, or the last question she asked you, is around the voters, the young people who are going to be voting. And if you look at the election statistics, voter statistics as released by documented by the chairman of INEC yesterday, it speaks to a lot. And I just want to ask you concerning that and how significantly people really do understand what's going on. For instance, out of more than 93 million people who are supposed to vote, 39.65 of them are between ages 18 and 34, and 35.75% are between ages 35 and 49. Together, they make 75.39% of total voters. That's it right there. And that means less than 25% of voters in this election coming in February are above age 49. I want to speak, I would like you to speak to the quantum of voter education that should precede this election and what your expectations are in the light of these statistics. Because hitherto, I don't know if we have ever gotten up to 30% of voters on any register since 1999 to come out to vote. So how well do you think we're doing, or would you say we're doing in terms of voter mobilization, voter education, so that this whole exercise is not in vain?
It's not coming up again.
Can you hear me now, sir? Prof, can you hear me now?
Yes, I heard the last part. Yes. Yeah, you're talking about voter education.
Yes.
Who should drive voter education?
How well do you think we're doing in that regard, given the statistics?
Go out there. Voter education is very, very expensive. INEC will do its own to the best of the fund that is made available to INEC. Political parties are also expected to be involved in voter education. The same thing applies to media houses as well. But I don't think we are getting the people out there to also access information that is required to make informed choices when it comes to election. For example, look at the people who are resident in the remotest parts of the country, in the villages, in areas that are very difficult to access, that are not accessible by road. How do we deliver on voter education to them? Because when you look at casting the vote, wrong printing of ballot papers, you come to the conclusion that there isn't sufficient voter education out there. Of course, we have so many media houses, radio. You remove the possibility of delivering voter education through online means by giving information, dishing out information on your mobile devices. That is not going to be accessible to majority of Nigerian voters because of the literacy level in this country. And how much can INEC do? The onus is on those who are looking to harvest votes, the candidates and the political parties. INEC, as much as possible, can do it the minimum in terms of delivering on voter education. The buck should stop on the table of the candidates and political parties. And of course, media houses can do voluntary voter education today, because without proper voter education, without adequate voter education, people will not be able to make informed choices. And where wrong choices are made, the country is going to be worse for it. So I think it's a task for, you see, if we have volunteers having a role to play in our electoral process, I don't think we should be talking about paucity of voter education. But there are not many for people are just every attempt to support people will demand for monetary reward. And where money culture is so rampant, you can't get volunteers to come out there to say, to see, and to participate. What can we do for our country?
Prof, well, Prof, perhaps the
so that
the
is
office,
the challenge.
Yes.
If I may ask, how many members of the public out there had made attempts to just go out voluntarily to give information to members of the public in the marketplaces, in the churches, in the mosque, just to enhance voter participation in the electoral process? Everything is
Prof,
money is
as we try to manage our time, If you can hear me, Professor Olurode, as we try to manage our times, perhaps we should see that level of political will or willingness, for want of description now, from the Office of the National Commissioner for Voter Education, to engage the media, first of all, and then we'll see, the success that will be recorded from that point. I'm just as concerned about the tension, the trepidation around our elections as my colleague Markwe is, which is why, I recall that concern raised at Chatham House yesterday by one of the participants who asked if it was possible, to review that template proposed by former President Goodluck Jonathan on a single tenure of 5 years or 7 years to encourage some form of stability in the polity as against what we have now, where elections in the country are more warlike than they are, items and icons of peace. And in that regard, the concern is also expressed in other parts of Africa, where there's the proposal for a national agenda, regardless of political parties, where, the concern is this is our direction, this is where we want to head in terms of development, and this is a developmental template for the country in the next 5 years, in the next 6 years, and this is what we're going to achieve, and this is where we'll direct our resources and our energies at. I wonder if you're thinking in that regard as well, and it's a template that can be considered, Prof.
We cannot be talking of matters that touch on amendment to the constitution of the country. We can't be talking about that now. That would be a debate for another day. What we should be concerned with is how do we reduce the possible tension, the environment. How do you make the environment of the election in this country to be more friendly and to not see it as a total war on the country? And I'm saying that, look, the federal government needs to do more. For example, you're now getting involved in the Nigerian Union of Road Transport Workers and Marine Workers to support INEC logistics in electoral operation. Now, at the same time, you have a government that are divided national assets in terms of ASU, CONUS. So what I'm saying is that you need to build national institutions, not to want to break national institutions, because you will still need those national institutions. It's good that we now see an asset in the Nigerian Union of Railway and Transport Workers, in Marine Workers at the same time. They can support, and they have supported in the past, national elections, because as an asset, they are part of the country. But at the same time, you have some government wanting to break that solidarity across religion, across ethnic barriers, across geographical barriers. So what do you make of that? So let's build institutions that can be regarded as, that can be dependable, reliable, and we can deploy during the process of election. We recognize this when Jega was the chairman of INEC, that in the transport union, it's a national access for resolving some of the logistical conundrum in our electoral process. We can't be talking of single time of whatever now. That should be a debate for another day. What should be looking at is, look, if you, in the future, you can be talking of how do you reduce the power of the president? How do you make sure that a national government is formed? If I know that I'm in this party, if I lose the election, I know at the end of the day, it doesn't stop me from becoming a minister. Why would I want the country to go under? Just because on the basis of one election. We need to build a national cohesion to govern together.
A very important point, which is something we will also look forward to talking about.
If I'm going to lose all, Chamberlain, if I'm going to lose all in an election.
So this winner takes all scenario, zero-sumness.
Is what is destructive.
We need to address it. I think it's a fantastic point you made, Prof. Thank you for coming on. Always a pleasure to have you on, Professor Lai Olurode, former National Commissioner with INEC.
But let me say before I leave that each time our elections attention reading, I can assure you, everything will go on well. Let's be positive about this country. We need to build a nation. We need to build a country that all of us will be proud of.
A good place to let it go. We will be back in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Yes, we're continuing our focus on the 2023 general elections. Well, you also did see that the chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, did speak at Chatham House, and he touched on this part, which is the component, the part that we're going to talk about now, an inclusive election. So we have two gentlemen joining us virtually to shed light on that part of Professor's speech, INEC chairman's speech. Mr. Jake Pele joins us. He is the CEO of the Albino Foundation, as well as you'll also get to see Philip Hisulo, who is the technology consultant for the Albino Foundation. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Good morning, Chamberlain, and thanks for having us.
All right.
Thank you, Chamberlain.
Okay. Let me start with you, Mr. Pele. I mean, listening to the INEC chairman, that part where he spoke about inclusive elections, you must have been thrilled about it. But what were your impressions when you heard him speak about that?
Thrilled, yes, I am. But my greatest, the greatest impact that his speech made on me is the fact that I can beat my chest and say that at the end of the day, we're going to have truly inclusive election driven by science, driven by data. It will be accurate, it will be achievable, and most importantly, the community of persons with disability will be served.
So about this data that he says they've got to ensure inclusive elections for physically challenged persons, how does it work? What is it about?
All right, Philip will throw more light on that, but what we've been advocating for since 2017, when we were challenged to provide data, and so we went to work to design a dashboard that would be able to pinpoint at each polling unit nationwide where there are clusters of persons with disability in their disaggregated manner. In other words, where are persons with albinism? Where is it that you can find persons who are blind, the deaf, those on a wheelchair? Every segment of the disability community represented, and recognizing their needs and ensuring that their need will get to where they are. This will be one election, the process of the inclusivity that will be guided by science. That way we're able to know exactly where the clusters of persons with disability are and how best to reach them.
Yeah, but before Philip comes in, just a minute, before he comes in, could you just shed some further light? I mean, yes, you talk about being guided by science. How significant are these figures? What kind of figure or data do you have for physically challenged, and such that everyone, including politicians too, need to pay attention to ensure that they also listen and ensure that they provide or meet their needs, as it were?
Very good question, Chamberlain. Let me say categorically, and in my opinion, that well over 16% of the entire electorate will be persons with disability. And also to say that any candidate that failed to pay attention to the community of persons with disability will lose this election, because we have the numbers, and numbers is what determines who wins an election. And we are prepared as a community to ensure that we reach every nook and cranny of this country as an organization, to reach every nook and cranny of this country where persons with disability are, to ensure that they get involved in the process. That's why we launched our Able to Vote campaign, which is a nationwide campaign on voter education. Your guest a few moments ago was talking about voter education. We need strategic voter education, reaching the people we are targeting. Not only that, but ensuring that the people that we are reaching will effectively participate in the electoral process. The final result is how many participants will participate in the electoral process. We are believing and trusting the process. I have implicit confidence in Professor Mahmoud his seriousness and doggedness to inclusivity. He has proven it that he's not paying lip service to it. He's actually doing the job. And the Albino Foundation, now TAF Africa, will support INEC. We are the one creating the dashboard guided by INEC data, the data they have in their system, and we'll be able to link our system with their system, of course, giving them the opportunity to be in charge because of security issues. All right. And we work together to deliver inclusive election. Chamberlain, it will be the first in Africa that we were able to use this process and guide the electoral process and ensure that these community of people that have not been participating in the electoral process will participate. I never voted until I was 58. And right now I am going to be 61 in May. So you can imagine all these years of not being given the opportunity to say who will lead me as a citizen of Nigeria.
Oh dear. I wanted to continue with the line of questioning for you, but we certainly have to bring Philip into the conversation. For instance, I'd like to know what precisely would have been the barrier for someone like yourself. But Philip, you know, of 19 million people, we understand that, oh dear, I understand that Philip is not exactly on the Zoom link right now. But let me continue with you then. What exactly was the barrier for you why you couldn't vote all of these years?
Okay, I'll answer that, but Philip is on call. Steve, it takes
I am
10
on the call.
minutes.
If you can hear me, please.
Oh,
It takes 10 minutes for me to born. It takes 10 minutes for me and any person with albinism to get born under the sun. 10 minutes. Now, gradual burning leads to skin cancer. I'm a skin cancer survivor. And so why would I go and stand in the sun for hours, you understand, trying to vote and then come home and die? You know, so that was one huge barrier. The second is that I'm not able to see. You're a friend. There are many times I've passed you and I didn't recognize you. And in your usual humility, you will call my attention. Others will think that, oh, he's just being brash. He doesn't want to say hi. But they don't know that I don't see, So we're introducing, INEC is introducing magnifying glasses for person with albinism. And that is why, because there is this provision, we have the greatest number of persons with disability who are eligible voters, and they are persons with albinism. The data are there to prove my claim.
Well, for a number of people, that would also be bordering on ignorance. I mean, in terms of, the challenges that people with disabilities face and, what sort of disabilities do exist. But let me ask you, Philip, when you look at the data, we understand that a significant sum or a significant population of the 19 million Nigerians living with disabilities are registered to vote. Can you give us accurate figures of, how many, and, what would you say the greatest challenge or the greatest barrier has been?
Okay, so I wouldn't give you figures. That's why we built technology that enables you to get those numbers if you want. And right now I'm on the portal, and any Nigerian, once it goes live, will be able to access it and see those numbers for themselves. And like Mr. Jake spoke earlier, it's been disaggregated. So if you come to the portal, you can go to a state of interest to you. and then you'll see how persons with disability is distributed. You're able to get numbers. For instance, in Kaduna State, there are 617,000 voters, who have one form of disability or the other, and that's a huge number. And for albinism, there is 1,520. So that data is disaggregated already. So for me to be on national TV and give you information that you cannot verify, it's what we've tried to solve by building a portal that allows you to get that information by yourself, And of course, like as been said earlier, part of the challenges that persons with disabilities face is that there has not been any system that has been put in place to enable them to, or rather to account for the unique circumstances. A person who is blind or who has one form of physical impediment will struggle to vote on election day. They may struggle to get to the ballot papers. And what INEC has done is to provide braille-based, what do you call it again? Ballot sheets. But what our platform is enabling them to do is to know how to distribute that braille sheet. You can know the state and local government and up to the polling unit level, the number of voters who would need that assistive device to be able to cast their vote. So the challenges that people living with disability has encountered all these years is what this INEC in this administration is trying to address. And our platform is built to enable them satisfy that need more accurately. And like was said earlier, we have this data coming from INEC since the continuous voter registration started. INEC has been capturing various data points on registered voters, which includes knowing their various disabilities. So what we are doing essentially with this platform is to connect to that data that INEC has captured over time and present it in a way that people can relate with it. And also INEC officials at the polling unit level and at the state level, at every level, can be able to know how to distribute materials, how to account for different persons and their unique disabilities. So yeah, that's what this is.
Okay, let me send this to my colleague, Ayo. He has a question for you.
Well, thank you, Malkwe. Well, Mr. Pele, the question that will naturally come is, again, the level of education, voter education or political education at that you would say comes to physically challenged people, or, definitely they will be in different grades. The level of education will be in different grades to different people in the different classes of this subject matter, in order to bring inclusiveness. Because it's not just about knowing that you need to vote. There are some other things that go with it. So in terms of education, participation includes educating the voter so that they know what to do, when and how. So how would you see us going in that direction? Or you think it's too early to call?
I don't know who is directing the question to.
It's to you, Mr. Pele.
Voter education.
Yeah, it's to you. The question is for you.
Okay, you're talking about voter education, Ayo. It was difficult to hear you, but what aspect of voter education? Because the persons with disability have peculiar issues, and if you want to really reach them and ensure that the awareness you're creating, they will understand it and it will make impact. One, you have to speak the language that they understand, language like sign language, which we provided during our Able to Vote campaign. You have to make sure that the environment that you're going to gather them are disability friendly. So we look for ramps and an environment that anybody with different kinds of disability can stay safe when that individual comes. You also ensure, because of some of the challenges within the community, poverty being one of them, you just make sure that they have enough resources in terms of money for transportation to and fro, and of course, the information you're going to share must be in what we call an accessible format. So it's a whole lot of very complicated process, but doable process. And that's what we are here for, and that's what we've been doing. It's not a perfect situation, but we insist on making it perfect. And of course, with the help of organizations like yours and several channels, giving us the platform to express ourselves and to reach our community is a task that must be done.
Well, Mr. Pele, closely related to the issue of voter education for persons with disability is what it would now look like.
It's also difficult to hear her.
Can you hear me? Is it clear now?
Yes, we can.
All right.
Yes, I can.
Yes, so closely related to voter education for persons with disability is what it will now look like on election day. For instance, you say that you can't stand for 10 minutes under the sun. So in those areas where there happens to be clusters for persons with disability that INEC has identified, when they arrive, there are different polling units, for instance. Are they going to join the queue? And what form of assistance has been provided by INEC, to ensure that they get over and done with in good time, because these are people with special needs? I wonder if you have anticipated what would happen to that extent.
Okay, well, I'm not trying to sweet-tongue you. I think channel your staff, you are very professional, intelligent in asking questions. That's a very intelligent question. I must say that there are two strands of delivering an inclusive election, to the best of my knowledge. Number one is what I call the product. The other one is the process. So let me attack the product. The product are specific physical devices or physical, it could come in form of braille, paper, technology that you deploy to assist eligible voters with disability to perform their franchise. That INEC will provide. And don't forget, when we advocated for Section 54, subsection 1 and 2, which is the Electoral Act, the Electoral Act provides by law that INEC must provide these things. So INEC has acquired them. And I want to commend Professor Mahmood, because he did not acquire them on his own, unlike what many government establishments do. They will do things for us without us. Professor Mahmood insisted that the community of persons with albinism must sign off. I did on behalf of the community, that this is what we need, the magnifying glass. And every other cluster signed off on this is what we need. Okay, so there'll be braille, there'll be magnifying glasses, there will be posters for our deaf brothers and sisters, Now, process, one is priority voting. Unlike before, once I arrive at the polling unit, and anyone with disability, you have the right of vote. You have the first right of vote. So you go talk to the supervisor. He sees your disability, knows you're a person with disability. You'll be given the first spot to vote and leave if you have to leave. So, and for those who are blind, they will be led by their caregiver, and they can vote and leave. Those who are any form of disability, you have priority voting. Those who are blind, like I said, will be led, get to a place where there's a braille jacket, fix the braille jacket, they vote and go. Those who can't read the braille, their assistants will help them to vote. And let me say here, because this is a very powerful national television opportunity, do not allow your caregiver to tell you who to vote. Who to vote is your own civic right, and don't allow anyone to take it from you. So it's important that you know this. For places where there are issues with access. If there are opportunities for RAM, it will be there. I can't guarantee that it will be across board, but this is the beginning of good things to come for the community of persons with disability. I believe that this will be the most inclusive and credible election ever going forward. But also to say that Nigerians should not be disturbed. Insecurity has always been there, but it's not insurmountable. We will go over it and we will deliver credible, fair, and inclusive election at the end of the day. And that's why many of us are working at the back end to support INEC, give them the resources that they need, you know, to ensure that. Thank you, sir.
I think it will definitely put a lot of smile on people's faces when they hear that their vote will count, but nobody wants to see any sort of drama or some more magic happening anywhere. So let me flip to Philip on this one to probably share his screen and demonstrate to us how that technology works. I mean, can you go to any local government area and see what's going on, Philip?
Oh, yes, you can, exactly. Chamberlain, you totally understand the technology. All right, so my screen is being shared, and I hope it's picked up for Nigerians to see. Oh, beautiful, yeah. Beautiful. So on this platform, you can see that we have the map of Nigeria, and the states are colored differently. This is a heat map, so it just shows the density of persons with disability in each state. Kaduna, Lagos, and Sokoto seem to have the highest density of persons living with disability who are registered to vote in the forthcoming election. You know, so for instance, let's take Kaduna as an instance, and as a voter, as an INEC official, as a Nigerian who is inquisitive about the information and the data, I hover on that state. I can already see a breakdown of how persons with disability is distributed in that state. You know, and the same thing goes for any state you hover on. For your base state, you can get that information. But if I choose to click on Kaduna, for instance, and yes, I get a screen loaded for me, and it shows me the number of voters with disability in that state. I can also see the number of polling units that have persons living with disability in them over here. And I can also, when I scroll down a bit, I'm able to see how that number is distributed across the various and disability groups that we are interested in, or rather that has been captured by INEC. So for albinism, you see is 1,520. And for blindness, you can see the number there for deafness. And that was why earlier I said, with this system, I don't need to have the numbers on the back of my head. You know, I can always come back here and get that data accurately. And the good thing about this is that you can also go to the local government level. So say for Kaduna State, I choose to go to Kaduna South, and I would see that number also for that particular local government. So there are 194 voters with disability, and I can see the polling units that are of interest here, over here on my left. So it's really going to help anyone who wants to get this information, in particular INEC officials who want to know how to distribute these voting materials that addresses the needs of each group of persons living with disability. You know, and you can do that for the ward level also. You see, you go to the television ward in Kaduna South, you can see the numbers also. So I know that I need to provide support for one person with deafness, and I can see the polling units where that person is, you know. And if I need to provide voting ballot papers, I would also know that 3 would have to be provided for this ward. And for polling units, I can, of course, choose any polling unit of my choice, and I see that number also. You know, so this enables Nigerians, civil society group, persons with disability, and so forth to get this information at the click of button, and it's quite responsive, very fast. It's accessible on mobile devices, and it would really go a long way to help INEC in how it distributes voting materials and accounts for the needs of persons living with disability. So yeah, it will come online very soon, and it will be accessible from electionhub.org.ng. So when that happens, any Nigerian who is interested in this data can go in and access it. And all of this data came with the support of INEC. Like I mentioned earlier, since the continuous voter registration started, INEC have been capturing more and more data points to understand voters, and disability is what we are focused on, and taking that data and presenting it in this format. So as registration continues after this forthcoming election, this data will be updated and would subsequently be used by anybody who is interested in the data. Yeah, so Chamberlain, this is a little rundown of the system. There is a lot more that this platform is also doing. On election day, we're also able to see how security personnel are performing at the polling units. We're also able to observe how INEC responsiveness to the needs of persons with disability happens. We built a mobile app that observers from civil society group and also from the Albino Foundation are able to use to send real-time reporting to the data. So it's quite, it will be a system that will help both the Albino Foundation in producing reports that will help decision making, and for INEC also to be able to know how they performed in the election. So it goes beyond showcasing the data of persons with disability to also capturing real-time information on election days.
Brilliant from the Albino Foundation. I mean, this is, it's good to know that all the security agencies, INEC, everybody out there, that our eyes are on you. We're watching to make sure things go well. Well, gentlemen, we have to let it go at this point. There are more questions, but, you know, it's good. We'll give people the tip of the iceberg in terms of what to expect. So now they know that good things sure can come from Nazareth, in the manner of speaking. We have to thank both of you, Mr. Jacob Pelle, CEO, the Albino Foundation, and yourself, Mr. Philip Pihesulo, technical consultant for the Albino Foundation. Thank you both, and all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Indeed, we've got Ahmed Zakari joining us now in the studio. He is the Special Advisor to the President on Power and Infrastructure. He's also a member of the APC's Presidential Campaign Council. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Thank you for having me.
Well. Where do we start? Nigerians are not happy with the power situation in the country, either with the electricity tariff, or is it the metering, or the supply. How do we explain this? Or can you tell us now to explain what's going on?
Yeah, I think, Chamberlain, it's important to understand where we came from and where we are and where we need to get to. When the APC administration came in, this sector was comatose. We had ballooning subsidies. 582 billion naira was its peak, and it was approaching 1 trillion naira. No national, scalable metering program. No policy on renewable energy. There were even provisions of the Act on setting up the Rural Electrification Fund. Since 2005, only in 2017, under the Buhari and the APC administration was that set up. And unfortunately, we also had a lot of crony capitalism, where our distribution companies, as well as other assets, were either sold to people that were not capable to manage them, or contractors that couldn't execute them. And where we are after the APC has come to power is really we've stabilized the sector. 8 out of the 11 distribution companies that were sold to incapable investors have been restructured by this administration. We have a national mass metering program with an outlook to eliminate the deficit. We have rural electrification programs We actually in December recorded our largest collections in the history of the Nigerian power sector at 80 billion. And we know we have a candidate in Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his running mate Kashim Shettima that understand how to make the power sector continue to improve.
You know, even if we understand, could be patient about some of, in terms of the policies that are out there, but you also do know, I reckon, of several other voters, thousands of them, who don't understand why they are running currently on estimated billing, even though the mass metering program has said they would have been taken care of by now. How do you explain that to them?
And, you know, I've been here in the past and we've talked about the National Mass Metering Program. It's good to look at where we are. As I said, prior to the National Mass Metering Program, there was no scalable policy on metering in the country. The first phase of the metering program has distributed 1 million meters. We've subsequently concluded the process for another 4 million meters that are all going to local manufacturers. If you go to NEMSA, for instance, more than 20 new local manufacturing companies have been onboarded to assemble those meters locally. You know, President Buhari actually withheld some funding that was available from the World Bank for a short period of time to allow us to restructure the DISCOs. And we have a World Bank facility that will fund another 1.25 million meters. So what I would say, Chamberlain, is we know the gap when we started was about 9.8 million meters. 1 million has been done by the first phase of the National Mass Metering Program. Another 4 million will be done by the second phase, which should commence shortly. And then another 1 million funding has been secured and procurement will commence.
When does the second phase start and end?
Second phase start and end? It should start this first quarter. All the contracts.
March?
Yes, before March.
Oh.
Yeah. So it explains why people are yet to see the meters, even though there is a mass metering program in place. I mean, people are not wrong to say, look, you've brought up all these policies, but we're yet to feel the effect.
Well, we did 1 million. And the process to ensure that, you know, it's easy to give away revenues and programs that should benefit Nigerians to external parties. The intent was to make sure all of the National Mass Metering Program new build meters were done in Nigeria. Having 41 companies that will provide thousands of jobs. And in our manifesto, and even recently, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu in his meeting on the 22nd of December in Lagos stated that we'll do everything possible to make sure Nigerians have power and there'll be no more continuation of estimated billing. But we can only get there if we meter.
60 million Nigerians are currently on the, I think, connected to the national grid. I do not know how many of those people have, you know, are metered with the prepaid meters, because that's essentially what Nigerians are looking forward to. But you say you're able to provide 1 million. You're looking forward to providing another 4 million by the start of this quarter or before the end of this quarter. I'm wondering, because, you know, whether or not to accept, it's a big part of the campaigns that are currently going on. Each of the candidates, you know, have been asked questions as to what they intend to do to resolve the power crisis. There are those who believe that the fact that we have a national grid is one of the problems, that we need to decentralize more. It doesn't look like we've pursued that particular, because it does appear that the APC understands that, but is not willing to pursue it too aggressively. So, for instance, you have the rural electrification project, which has been doing quite a number of, you know, projects. You also have a new policy on on renewable energy. However, there are questions as to, you know, whether or not this national grid system is sustainable, considering how many collapses we have seen under the APC administration?
Yeah. So, very great questions, Mope. A lot to unpack. Let me try to go through them carefully. Firstly, as I said, prior to the APC administration, provisions of the Electric Power Sector Reform Act to create a rural electrification fund for our rural communities were unimplemented for 12 years, from 2005 to 2017. We did that with the understanding that you can't assume that people that are very far from the grid can effectively get power just by waiting for the grid, especially when there's so much technology today with solar panels, mini grids, solar home systems. So we created the Rural Electrification Fund. Additionally, we went out and actually facilitated $550 million of funds through the Africa Development Bank and World Bank. These are one of the most monitored programs in the world with those institutions. And the Nigerian Electrification Program under the REA has actually rolled out about 1 million connections using the NEP proceeds. Why don't you hear about it? Unfortunately, you know, we have a silent majority in this country where people in rural areas, unless you visit them, people don't know what's happening. But if you go around in places I've been to, like Rokota in Niger, if you go to Farundaba in my home state of Jigawa, you'll see populations that never had electricity because of the APC administration now have that power. And in Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Kashim Shettima's Renewed Hope Manifesto, our party's manifesto, we're committing to continue that rural electrification expansion. Now, on grid, you're absolutely right. If we know that power is a commodity that is commercial, if you have even 100 gigawatts of capacity, but we can only meter and commercially collect 20 gigawatts of power, you know, the commercial vendors of power will only sell what they can collect. So as we expand our capacity, it is also essential that we do it in a commercially and economically pragmatic way. And that's what the APC has done in stabilizing the sector. And that's what we hope and are working with to continue to do if Nigerians give our candidates the opportunity, which we hope they will.
The question I'm asking is, you seem to have recorded great success in areas where people have not been connected to the national grid.
Yes.
You have made significant progress with the REA, Rural Electrification Agency. Why is it that there's not been that much aggression in also trying to pursue a decentralization, if that is what exactly is delivering more results to the Nigerian people?
So, thank you for the clarification. When we think about the REA and decentralization, to an extent, many of those concepts are synonymous because the mini grids, which essentially could take a 2,000 person cluster, provide them 1 megawatt of power through a power plant that's solar hybrid in that community, an improvement in the local distribution network, and metering is something that we're doing through REA. So for instance, about 100 mini grids have been rolled out between REA's budget, the NEP program, as well as the Rural Electrification Fund. We're also working now to enhance regulation to encourage more interconnected mini grids. So what we call power augmentation. Some communities, even though they're in urban areas, because of our large urban sprawl, if you wait for the grid to help them only, say, oh, we'll only take our rural electrification money out of town, those places, because of our urban sprawl, will continue to struggle. So we're encouraging developers now to put power plants, 500 kilowatts, 1 megawatt, in peri-urban areas. There's a project that's the power minister visited late last year in Zawachiki, in Kano, in Kumbotso local government, where a developer put a power plant there and is connecting 2,000 customers. So they'll get grid power at night, but in the daytime, they'll get power from the local power plant. But these programs need to be rapidly expanded. The Rocky Mountain Institute did a project in Mokoloki, I think in Ogun State recently, that also worked on this concept. So I absolutely agree with you. We have to continue to work on the grid. That will help us in our large urban areas. But we must continue, and that's what the APC administration under Asiwaju, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and Kashim Shettima have promised to continue to do, if you look at our Renewed Hope manifesto, is to rapidly expand renewables and also give our off-grid space additional incentives and breathing room, such that as we're building up capacity on grid, we're building capacity off grid as well.
All right, our colleagues in Lagos, I've got some questions for you.
Thank you, Chamberlain. I'm wondering if our guest, Mr. Zakari, would speak to the continued electricity tariff increase, which is making many people uncomfortable. Well, granted that things that are happening with the rural electrification, I mean, is going, just as Malcolm noted, and many people are happy about that. However, considering the costs that those in urban Nigeria have to bear in order for them to have electricity, it's most certainly concerning. For instance, there are those, Professor Yemi Oke, for instance, who is a professor of energy law, says that, you know, there are certain procedures that ought to be followed that are not being followed. The MITO, for instance, is supposed to be reviewed and specifically authorized, which is supposed to specifically authorize tariff increase after following laid down rules, including wide consultations. But guess what? That does not happen, according to him. So if those are not done and tariff increase happens and people are not comfortable, how then can we have small businesses enjoy the businesses that they're supposed to do and deliver services to Nigerians at good enough prices, affordable prices?
That's a great question. But I also think that in looking at our nation, we must be a nation of laws, and we must follow our rules. And those rules are laid down to ensure equity and fairness. It is not it's not news that every 6 months the law requires the electricity regulator to review the multitude of tariffs across the nation. And that is not done to be punitive. It's done to be fair, because essentially some communities will have factors that cause their tariff to reduce. Some may marginally increase. But you also have the providers of that electricity that have some of their factors changing. When you say tariff, it's a bit of a misnomer in today's world because we have multiple discos, multiple tariff bands, and there's no one resolution. There are locations that have experienced tariff reduction. Some have experienced tariff increase. And the government actually continues to subsidize citizens in bands C, D, and E, which is where most of our areas that don't receive power and are less affluent are. So I think some people have tried to weaponize tariff politically. We must have a electricity sector that's built on commercial pragmatism, and we must use our limited resources to subsidize the citizens that need that subsidy. And we continue to do that. This year we've spent 120 billion naira, last year, subsidizing our lower bands. But targeted subsidies are better than giving a subsidy to somebody in Metama or Ikoyi with 20 ACs that can pay.
Well, just as you rightly pointed out, a particular part of Abuja and the former commercial capital, weaponizing tariff may be debatable. But I'd like to look at another area, which is discos. And at the start of your commentary, you lauded the restructuring of the discos as a plus for the administration in terms of stabilizing the sector. But the discos don't think the same way. They talk about inadequate data at the onset of privatization, government's failure to fulfill the commitment of subsidies of 100 billion naira, and of course the debt owed also by the ministries and agencies, 100 billion naira, and the debt owed is a lot of money, too much in fact to take in their strides, don't you think, Mr. Zachary?
No, and I really like coming to Sunrise because the level of research on these questions is always deep. What I would say is there's always development and evolution, which is why we need to check in and discuss with the public continuously through programs such as this. I'd say that many of those factors that you've talked about have merit. But we've done a lot, as I've said, in the rescue mission that the Buhari-Osinbajo administration and the APC has done on this sector. For one, if you look into our regulations, there's actually an offset regulation that was released by the regulator that is allowing discos to claw back almost 100 billion naira of MDA debt from federal agencies that have not paid them. And that's ongoing now. And the Ministry of Finance and the Budget Office are funding that repayment. Additionally, if you discuss with discos today, with the fact that there are reviews and the restructuring, you'll find that some of our disco performances, if you talk to citizens in Kano, citizens in Kaduna, Ibadan, Benin, Port Harcourt, with the discos that have been restructured, they're having better service delivery, and the health of those discos commercially is improving. For example, look at Kaduna Disco. In January of last year, they were barely doing 1.8 billion naira with significant gaps in paying their dues to the market. So we could not pay Gencos for the energy that they were receiving. As of December, they almost did 3 billion naira. The Yola Disco privatization has been extremely successful. It was a disco that was doing 600 to 700 million naira. And even with the power challenges in Maiduguri, that disco did about 1.3 billion naira in December. We can't have a sector that is not economically sustainable and expect it to grow. And what this administration has done and what the APC promises to continue to do through Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Kashim Shettima is build a market based on economic pragmatism that is sustainable and that focuses subsidies and help to citizens that need it, while those that can pay, pay. As I said, metering is big on our candidates' agenda. Rural electrification is big on our candidates' agenda. Since the Buhari-Osinbajo administration has stabilized the sector, what we expect is the Tinubu-Shettima administration to really come and accelerate and make it fly.
All right, many will look forward to that one, that breakdown as well, so they can be on the same page with your candidate and his manifesto on that particular aspect of power provision. He talked about 24-hour uninterrupted power supply when he wins. All right. Well, we'll have to let it go at this point. Ahmed Zachary, SA to the President on Power and Infrastructure, also a member of the APC's Presidential Campaign Council. We've got some emails here. Let me see if I can take one of them. I think you may find it interesting. It comes from Willie. He says, it's a tweet actually, he says, I believe Nigeria's energy crisis may not be resolved realistically until policymakers and energy decision makers take practical steps to decentralize our energy options and structures. Until we start to practicalize this approach, we will be going in circles.
Well, Robinson says the question asked concerning the voter education is a welcome one. Please, can they at least show how this BVAS works and how voters should know exactly if they have voted, or else most voters will be thinking they voted while it's not. But I think it's important to state you're not going to use the BVAS to vote. You're still going to use your what do you call that now, voter card with your ballot paper. So you will certainly know when you have voted with your thumb printing on that ballot paper. It's very important to state that.
Yeah, voter education is the key word there, Markwe. Thankfully, this one is short. Low Alpha Cross says, all hands have to be on deck to ensure the success of 2023 general elections. If we get it wrong this time, crises aren't good for the country.
Well, this one is an email from Amechi Ugwele, who writes, while it is cheering that the INEC chairman has reassured that the election must go on as scheduled, with all the measures put in place to enhance and guarantee the integrity of the exercise, it is also most heartwarming that the youths, as the voter registration statistics show, are finally assuming their rightful place. That is the only way to reclaim and guarantee their hitherto never-coming future. They must now come out to vote to completely make it real.
All right, there you go. That is the show today. We do thank you all for watching. As always, we'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
I'm Maokwe Ogunyuso. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your morning with us. I am Bukola Samuel Webimo.
Go get your PVC, please. Amaya Makinde. Have a wonderful day.